Hello and welcome back to 40,000 Layers.
Suddenly the energy just like de-intensifies.
De-intensifies. It's very serious. I'm a professional when I want to be.
Maybe you
Okay.
should just keep the recording going throughout the break, and you could just cut that up
it
and have it be like outtakes for the patrons or something.
is.
Because
It is just chaotic. Like it's just chaotic, honestly.
then there'd be a record of me saying that Orican smells of Werther's originals.
Which I'm not mad about. I agree.
Yeah.
That came about because I have a Necron Triarch model in a Haribo tub, and it smells of Haribo sweets.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad about it. Sheepy pointed out that I should talk about my upcoming event, which is Hallow Week, which
Hello,
I
week.
do a week of spooky streams, like scary games, different outfits, cool makeup, and this year I have bought some models to paint during Halloween. Probably going to prioritize just one of them, but the models I have bought are blown out by the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Gloom Sprite gets endless spells. I accidentally turned that off. I meant to just turn it down. So we
Okay.
have a cool exploding mushroom.
That's
We
such
have the
that's such
moon,
cool little minis. The
a
Bat Moon.
cauldron spider, and like
I
lots of
feel
spooters.
a bad moon rising.
So I don't know which one I'm gonna paint.
I really like the moon, but like they're all so cool.
They're all so good. Um, I really like the little cauldron. I think it's adorable.
It is, yeah. I'd
But
say the least appealing one is just the like
the
floor of
spiders, yeah, on the
spiders. Yeah,
floor,
yeah.
they're kind of boring. Not gonna lie. Um,
That's gonna be super fun for Halloween though.
I know. I really like all the endless spells though, generally. So I'm glad that I let myself have them to
Yeah,
paint. I was like,
and
yes, I deserve this.
and thank you to the patrons who made that a possibility.
Oh no, this is just me.
Oh wait, is that just out of your own pocket?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was hungover and I wanted them, so I bought them.
Fair enough.
But thank you to the patrons for making the Slith happen.
Yeah.
Who I'm back to painting.
And I'll go back to talking about the Drukhari.
Ooh.
So, we basically got to the birth of the. Like, we got so distracted in the first episode. Hey, welcome to the second episode, where hopefully we'll get to the point where we could talk about the Drukhari properly. It depends how many questions Tash will have as we go.
I've been told off about this in the past. I want everyone to know.
I thought the Mechanicus sidebar was quite funny.
It was only I say that in a light, like I wasn't.
Yeah. I'm not actually annoyed by the sidebars and the
No,
what
because
have yous.
uh, that's just who I am. So
Yeah, the same way Tash comes to hate all of her creations in terms of mini painting.
mhm.
Actually, you don't come to hate anything. You start off hating them. Like the second brush hits mini, you're like, I hate this.
I hadn't even touched the mini before I hated it. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, literally,
Uh,
to like when I was just in the first episode, I'm like, I hate this so much. How am I going to do this?
yeah. But you got going, and now it's better. You
Yeah,
probably hate it just the same, but that's fine.
it's getting. Who knows?
So, Slanesh rips into existence.
Mhm.
All the Eldar get driven insane. The ones that don't die. Giant rift in the real space. The warp kind of like spills into reality, and demons are around, and the majority of the Eldar die and get swallowed by the Eye of Terror, and everything's horrific.
Yep.
Um,
Bad sort of day for him.
yeah. And Slaanesh like had a nice little feast. Well, it's actually pretty big feast, to be fair. And also ate the Eldar gods, but that's a whole other story which we've already kind of been through. So the only thing that remained of the Aeldari from the birth of Slaanesh, well, after the birth of Slaanesh happened, and all the horrific things, were the Exodites, the Craftworld Eldar, who were kind of like half shielded, and they were like the Exodites and the Craftworld Eldar were half shielded and half like far enough away to escape the worst of the like aftershock.
Yeah.
And the people, the Eldar who were hiding, well, not hiding, but essentially they were hidden away
in their secret club.
In their secret club in the webway. Now, a lot of the webway were like the webway was fairly not ordered, but it was fairly organized, and kind of when Slaanesh came into being, the webway was like shattered, and it's all topsy-turvy and weird, and I think a bit of the warp kind of spills in, and it's all kind of like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I get you.
So with Slaanesh being birthed, nothing really exactly happened to what is to become the Drukhari. Like,
yeah, they like go on.
The majority of the Eldar who weren't Exodites or on Craftworlds straight up got turned insane and killed each other, or just outright died and got consumed by Slaanesh. The Dark Eldar didn't really suffer that fate at all, or the Eldar hiding in the webway in their little clubhouses. They were kind of cool. Like they felt the birth of Slaanesh, same as everyone else.
Right.
And obviously like that did affect them, but physically they're cool. Like they didn't get destroyed, they didn't get consumed, they didn't, they were just like, oh damn, that's weird. It's like you have indigestion, I guess. Even when they're like, oh shit, the entirety of our empire has been destroyed, they're like, yeah,
guess we'll go back to our clubhouse.
Yeah, they didn't even stop. They were just like, let's keep torturing and all that type of thing. So they just kept going. Well, however, they were slowly to find out that the Eldar outside of the webway, outside of the Craftworlds, etc., they just had their souls consumed by Slaanesh. It was just like, and then what happened to the Eldar in the webway is they essentially are consistently having their soul drained.
The ones
all eternity.
Oh.
So if a Drukhari is just to if a Drukhari is just like, I'm just gonna sit here for a decade, he or she would eventually have their soul completely slurped out by Slaanesh.
Okay. Not ideal. So they can't hang out there for long.
Well, I mean, so we'll get to that. So the worst part about it for all Eldar, Dark or whoever, is they created Slaanesh, and now she is essentially like their eternal punishment.
Yes.
The Eldar have to desperately cling on to souls of their dead brothers, and the Dark Eldar are slowly being drained of their existence, of their very essence, at all times.
Yeah.
And all Slaanesh really has an interest in is just consuming the Eldar. Like, sure, Slaanesh will be like, oh, a human planet, yay, stomp. But given the choice, Slaanesh will just like completely ignore 500 human planets for like a couple of Eldar because it's just like yum yum yum.
Yeah, because of their extreme feeling, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So the way the Eldar kind of the Craftworld Eldar hold off and kind of deny Slaanesh is the Spirit Stones, the Infinity Circuits, and their paths.
Yeah.
Basically, they don't. It's weird because they kind of seek perfection, but they seek like a much more over. They don't focus.
It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, they search for balance in perfection. So the interesting thing that at this point we can call them the Drukhari, I think, because essentially they are now the Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
Especially now that as they kept going, they found out that the more evil and destructive and decadent and fucked up, let's just call it fucked up, the more fucked up acts they did, the more they could avoid their souls being sucked out.
Yeah, because if they can actively feel it whilst it's happening. Because I was wondering how they sort of found out that Slaanesh was sort of eating people's souls, I suppose.
Yeah,
but...
so imagine a machine that's like slowly being drained of power.
Yeah.
A Dark Eldar, a Drukhari, will take a human or an orc or anything and torture them and do the most depraved and fucked up things to them over the course of a century for as long as they can to like eke out their suffering, and it's the equivalent of a battery to them.
Yeah.
So all that energy they're losing, they fill up in themselves through psychic pain and torture and like it basically nourishes them and keeps Slaanesh from getting closer to them, essentially. Mm-hmm. So not only does that be a thing, because they're in the webway and because, you know, these type of things are weird, it also, the more and more they do it, the more they torture and feed upon the misery of, you know, other intelligent life, they slowly become immune psychically to time. Essentially, it makes them immortal.
Right, and then they can't die and get eaten by normal old age means.
Yeah.
Got it.
What this means is that what were once a like very decadent and very very messed up faction of Eldar then became something in their own rights, which is even if they kind of grow bored of torture, or even if they don't really particularly want to keep torturing and being horrible people, they have to, so that their immortal souls aren't sucked and eaten by a god, an evil god.
Yeah, that they oh.
And like it's since that time, it's literally been like 10,000 years. Those Drukhari are still alive, the ones who started in Comorar, in that secret place in the webway. They're still alive, and Slaanesh is still slowly sucking out their souls.
It's just so tiring.
Yeah.
You can't have a nap. Um, but like normal Eldar can join them, right? Or am I misremembering? Like
What do
if
you
they
mean?
chose to become Drukhari and
Some have, not very many, but some
yeah.
have. And the same with the Drukhari. Some have, switched over and
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I was
But
remembering right.
this is the thing, is like it's kind of the same for the Eldar. Like
Mm,
Slaanesh is still there. Slaanesh still wants to nom on their souls.
yeah.
So there's no like
Winners here.
yeah, it's like being on a treadmill, you know, like
You just got to stay a little
even
further ahead.
yeah, you're on a treadmill and the treadmill's going, and you can kind of turn it down slightly so that it's not going as fast, so you can keep going, but it doesn't stop. There's no respite from having your soul sucked out by Slaanesh. There's no respite from Slaanesh existing and wanting to consume you. So there's always that like hanging over the Eldar, the Craftworld Eldar, the Harlequins, the Exodites, the Drukhari. So, like, in my opinion, there's a lot of tragedies in 40k because that's basically how it's designed.
Yeah, Grimdark.
The the fall of the Eldar is completely the fault of the Eldar, but it's definitely one of the bigger tragedies of 40k because it's so fucked up. Not that I feel bad for the Eldar or the Dark Eldar or anything, but to have like thousands, millennia of basically running on a treadmill, that's gotta fucking suck.
Yeah. No.
And especially for the Eldar, who is arrogant and kind of assholey as they can be, it's not like they don't feel the weight of their fucking mistakes
Yeah, and the ones that
on
tried to
them.
leave before it was like that level
Yeah,
to birth Slaanesh.
yeah. So I as much as the Eldar and Dark Eldar and etc. aren't my favorites, I do like there is I see the appeal there, and I do really like their story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a little bit more sympathy.
Well, I mean, we kind of went through this on the Eldar chats, but apparently you just like the evil in the galaxy because you're like, when we talk about the Dark Eldar, you're like, I can see.
It calls to me, it's all I can say. Plus, I've fallen off a treadmill one time. I understand the pain.
Slaanesh ate my soul. It sucked.
It's a very
Um,
trying time.
yeah. 10,000 years of torture of that kind and having your soul drained would drive you insane if you're human.
Yeah.
You know.
But the Drukhari get on
So
with it.
should we talk a little bit about Komorrah?
Yeah. Who's Comra?
So Komorrah is I think this is a quote from an Eldar. So Komorrah is the giant city-state in the Webway, which is basically the main home or just the home base of the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari. Here's a quote from Spirit Seer Iana Arienal. I'm assuming it's from a book, probably, as opposed to a codex. The Scions of the Dark City would never admit that the unceasing hunger at their core is what drives them to such heights of cruelty. Instead, they maintain that they act only upon their own desires. Some have even managed to convince themselves of this. In truth, our cousins in the Webway feed upon a constant diet of extreme emotion that will slowly wither away, leaving naught but a soulless husk. We of the Craftworlds deny all such urges, and in doing so, become less than ourselves. Perhaps it is those that we left to perish who are the lucky ones. Which I think is a really good quote to essentially, you know, highlight the problem of just being Eldar.
Yeah.
Which is the Craftworld Eldar become less than they were because they basically deny a whole load of who they are.
Yeah, so they don't get...
So that they don't get nommed. And the Dark Eldar keep themselves alive by feeding upon torture and misery and despair and pain and stuff. But they do still slowly wither themselves and become a lot less than they were. You know, the more you do it, the more you kind of don't have much of a soul to suck anymore.
And it's constant.
Yeah. It's a little bit like a battery, actually, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the more and more a battery is used, the less it can kind of store.
Yeah.
Ugh.
They should share their rocks.
Well, that also doesn't really work. Like, it's essentially what this Spirit Seer is saying is like
it sucks for us all.
Yeah, it's like we're all in a state of decay and degradation. The ones we abandoned who died to Slaanesh are probably the ones who got the best deal.
Yeah.
So the Eldar kind of consider the webway to be fairly important. I wouldn't say they're religious about it, but they're a little bit. They're religious about their maiden worlds. They care a lot about the webway. And the Komorrah is basically a giant, slowly growing black spot where it's like the Eldar don't like what the Dark Eldar, what the Drukhari do. And having them there in like a remnant of their once amazingly great empire, like being assholes and torturing people and all that type of stuff, they're not super happy about it. But
what they're gonna do?
Yeah. Komorrah is a mix of capital and big spaceport and home and city and country and all of those things kind of like mixed in together.
Yeah.
There's a point which again we'll talk about probably closer towards the end of these episodes, but essentially the Imperium like boomfed in and was like, "Hey, what up, bitches? Let's destroy Komorrah."
Did they turn up a Komorrah?
And it was so confusing for them because it's not real. It's not in real space. Like up is down, down is up. Like if you are trying to fly up, you're actually flying down and you hit the floor, which is actually the ceiling. And you move quicker than you were intending to, and all that. So when they bamfed in and they were like, "Yo, what's up? Let's have a fight." Like the Dark Eldar have been living there for a long time. They're used to this shit. The Imperium had a massive problem when they tried because they were like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Never mind. We'll come back later, okay?
The best way to describe the best way to describe that fight in like the webway in Komorrah would be to say it's like a Star Wars fight, except for it makes more sense.
You say makes more sense or no sense?
More sense.
Oh, okay.
Like it's not quite as bad as a fight in Star Wars because that just doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Fuck you, Star Wars. For the most part, yeah. For the most part, it like consider it to be like platform cities that orbit each other, and are kind of linked by portals and pathways, and it's like giant spiky spires and all of that type of thing. And like, I'd say that's probably the best way to describe it. Although
I can envision it. I've watched enough sort of sci-fi shows and films.
Yeah. So because it's not in real space, in the webway, they're quite close together. In the actual galaxy, like if you were trying to translate their position in the galaxy, they're like scattered all over the galaxy, like thousands of light years away from each other.
But you can find them in the galaxy, like the mirror.
So the webway has webway gates, which connects. The webway gates connect to each other. So you can go through a webway gate and it will come out in real space somewhere.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like Stargates, except for I think they're kind of hard. You can't just dial in a location and go there.
Okay.
To my knowledge. I'm not 100% sure on that. So
don't commit to it, huh?
I'm not going to commit. I'm just going to commit right now.
Hesitantly say this so I don't get told off.
I didn't want to do the webway with the Eldar because they don't use the webway as much as the Dark Eldar. So we will talk about the webway a little bit, but not quite yet. We'll talk about Commodore for now.
Okay. Well, this filigree is going great, actually.
That looks pretty cool.
It's hard. But
so what? Like, look at that. Like, no, turn it back. Like, show it off. God damn, that looks so cool.
Ugh. There's a lot of not breathing whilst I do these sections. Ugh.
So,
Commodore.
That, like, in a way, that's all that needs to be said about Commodore. Because it hasn't really changed. Like, it's still what it was. Like, obviously, some Dark Eldar die, and, they vie for power, but Commodore itself, not too much has happened since 10,000 years ago, Well, so we're talking about Commodore.
Yes.
And how basically nothing happens. However, one interesting thing did happen in the very, very, very recently. We talked about the big scar that was opened up in the galaxy.
Eye of Terror?
Yeah, it's a whole Cadia thing. Sorry, Cadian fans, but, you fucked up. And at the same time as it was basically the 13th Black Crusade and Abaddon the Despoiler, who was also known as Failbadon because he kind of failed the first 12 Black Crusades.
Oh.
We'll talk about him at some point, probably when we do the Lunar Wolves and Horus. The Eldar, Craftworld Eldar, shut off or collapsed some webway portals.
Yeah.
That led to Commodore, basically trying to isolate it from the rest of the webway. Because the webway is kind of moldable, they can still get about, and they basically can make temporary tunnels out and through and etc. So it didn't really make that much of a difference, but the Eldar tried, and yeah, essentially during that time, I'm pretty sure that the Imperials were led into a trap where they were convinced to attack the Commodore because it was Commodore's isolated and
we'll go attack that. It's gonna go swell.
What could go wrong? and then, well, we'll probably talk about that at some point. So, Komara, yeah, I'm not sure how much we really need to talk on about Komara. Yeah, it's the satellites, kind of cities that all make up Komara, and I think maybe we should probably just go into, unless you have any questions about it.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like, they made their clubhouse, they did some depravity, and then
Yeah.
made a god, and they were like, "Cool, not our problem. Let's carry on doing what we're doing." And then,
Yeah,
if they haven't extended it and they're not sort of adding loads to it, then
well, not really, no. They like a lot of the details of Komara, I like, there's different areas of it, but it kind of goes into other things like the mandrakes and the witch cults and the archons and the scourges and what's his face as Drukhari Vect, and the Cabal of Black Heart and other Cabals. And I just know that the second I start talking about it, someone's gonna be like, "Hey, Sheepy, what are those things?" And I'm gonna be like, "Okay." So I'm like, "How about seeing as there's talking about the makeup of Komara isn't super important or fascinating? Just kind of mentioning it and what it is, I think, is enough."
well, like, I really do want to know about this Imperium jaunt that failed, but I feel like if we're gonna talk, I don't know, it's a good time to talk about it if we're gonna talk about it in this grouping of painting anyway.
Are you sure you're not just saying that because you
No,
want...
I really want to know.
That's what I'm saying. Are you sure you're not just saying it because you want to know?
Well, like, we're talking about Comrade now, and you've mentioned it enough times. I'm like, well, I feel like this is the best intro to that we're gonna get if we're recording in this batch. So I feel like you should tell me about it.
Okay. Well, the thing, so the thing is it was M35, so that'd be like 36,000 year. So it's a few thousand years ago.
Not that long then.
But it was after the Horus Heresy and all those type of things.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's a cabal known as the Cabal of the Black Heart. I'm going to pause.
Who are they?
So, cabals are basically factions of the Dark Eldar, usually led by an Archon, who we'll get into what Archons are in a bit. And this cabal was led by Asuryani Vect.
Yeah.
I'm just like, every time I mention something, I'm like, I'll take a beat to pause so Tash can ask me who that is. Or what that is.
You're going to tell me about him anyway, so I'm not worried.
Yeah. So, essentially, Komara was ruled by noble Dark Eldar, some of whom have been alive since the birth of Slaanesh and before.
Mm-hmm.
And Asuryani Vect was like, I don't like this, mostly because I want to rule Komara.
Right.
So he hatched a bit of a plan, because obviously if you go at the king, you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
So Asuryani was like, well, let's call him Vect, because that's an easier one to say.
Yeah.
So Vect was like, okay, if I'm going to wipe out the
Boss man,
the boss men, the boss women, all of the ruling elite in Komara, I'm gonna have to be kind of sneaky and careful about it. So he basically headed out into real space with his forces and started raiding Imperial shipping, Imperial Guard outposts, anything in the Imperium he could find. he'd kind of like appear out of nowhere and fuck them up.
Right.
Lots of raiding, lots of plundering, and also, obviously, his cabal got more powerful and richer because he was raiding all this shit.
Nice for them.
Kind of a win-win, I guess.
Yeah.
So, because they were raiding so much in like this kind of area,
Yeah.
the salamanders showed up.
Yeah.
Salamanders are a space marine, one of the founding space marine chapters.
I know of them.
Yeah, and one of their ships turned up basically to look around and to see if they were needed or anything. Vect and his forces ambushed them, crippled them with haywire bombs. Haywire bombs basically knock out like electronics, complicated electronics, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a pulse.
Yeah.
What's it called?
EMP.
EMP. Thank you. Electric.
It took me a second.
Me too. I just couldn't remember to save my life. And essentially took the ship that was sent by the salamanders. When they took it back to Kumara, one of the higher rival lords in the ruling nobility confiscated the ship and wanted to like claim it. Now, what this Archon, what this like ruling Dark Eldar didn't know is that there was a salamander librarian in the ship, still alive, basically sending out a psychic distress beacon to all salamanders and anyone else he could kind of get his hands on, basically saying, I am held captive by the Drukhari. I'm in their headquarters. I am here.
Yeah. I saw this one coming.
So Vector's like, peace. And he's the equivalent of like,
I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna,
Let me just go get you some more ships, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for confiscating this ship, sir.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he brought it back because he knew the competitive assholey nature of all of the Archons and everyone is gonna lend someone to basically being like, give me this shit. So he kind of pissed off, and they broke into the ship and started fighting all the Space Marines in there. Now, it was like Space Marines are kind of dangerous, and they had a librarian and all that type of stuff. And he couldn't, like, this Archon couldn't manage to defeat them. Like, he kept getting repelled from the ship by the Space Marines who were like, no, Xenos filth, get the fuck off my ship. So he's like, hey, Vect, I want to be nice and generous. Here is the ship. You can have it back. You can have the rights to the ship. And then he was like, but once you get those fucking Space Marines out of there, all that shit is mine.
Yeah.
Basically, he didn't want to lose any more of his forces to the Space Marines.
Just let Vect do the dirty work. Like, then confiscate it again. Okay.
So while they were sieging this ship, suddenly like a little portal-y type thing kind of opens up above Komara, the city.
Mm-hmm.
And not only the salamanders, but also the Howling Griffins and Silver Skull Space Marine chapters fucking barged in.
What up?
So they're like, yo, what up? We're here to fuck you up, bitches. And they just started bombing stuff and like sending out ships. The salamanders, like their like bigger ship that they brought literally went straight through the spire of the Archon who stole the ship of Vect. like went straight through that and like broke it, like snapped the fucking thing in half and went straight through it.
Oopsie daisy.
Killed the Archon just in the ram. And then of course like the Eldar started defending it and like flew out, and there was like massive air battles, and the Space Marines who turned up, like the Salamanders, the Howling Griffins, and Silver Skulls, just started like firing drop pods out in all different directions, just basically be like, fuck it, ground forces, go. And like some of them like flew up to the ground that was above them.
Yeah.
And you know, oh god, it's just it's such silliness. And it was a stupid move, kind of, by the Space Marines. It was definitely a stupid move by the Dark Eldar Archon, who decided to keep this thing, to keep the ship and to basically not deal with it instantly and get rid of that librarian who's like a
beacon.
Yeah, he's like a freaking emergency beacon. The other problem that the Dark Eldar had fighting the Space Marines is, you know how the Dark Eldar like to maim and torture and capture slaves.
Were they getting a bit distracted?
Well, no. The problem is that Eldar weaponry, Dark Eldar weaponry, isn't designed specifically to kill outright.
Oh.
It can, but it's not what it's designed to do.
Oh no.
And the Space Marines are like are just like, they're little mini mobile tanks in person form.
Yeah. So they really needed killing good.
They're essentially firing needles at a tank. like poison tip needles and stuff like that. And like, haha, and the Space Marine's like, haha, what? I'm a brick wall and you're throwing a tennis ball at me. So they kind of like, they do have things that are more effective, like the incubi. They're kind of like melee warriors. They're very strong. The witches are really like good in melee and very agile as well. And they got warp beasts and they've got big ships and things to fight, but essentially the Space Marines, they're tough to beat, especially out like on the tabletop, because it's a game. Everything has to be fair, right?
Yeah. But in the universe, it doesn't.
In the actual stories and everything, it's not quite that way. Like, if you have a good 100 Space Marines, they can hold off an entire horde of Tyranids for like days. You know, there aren't that many Space Marines. There's a shit ton of Tyranids. The reason there aren't that many Space Marines is because they're fucking strong.
Yeah.
So I think they sent like 100 Space Marines down to like rescue the ship itself, and they just formed like this big perimeter around the ship and fought off like thousands of Dark Eldar and weird twisted beasts and all that type of thing. Until obviously, like, the more numbers you throw at the Space Marines, even the Space Marines can't deal with it, you know.
Yeah,
and anyone's
after
going to
amount of time they're gonna.
Yeah, you keep throwing forces at them, they'll slowly like lose troops and everything. So while that was all happening, they're trying to free the ship. A company of Terminators, which is Salamander's first company.
Right, I was like, which side are we on right now?
So Terminators are basically like Space Marine plus. Terminator armor is even better than the regular Space Marine armor. It's even stronger. It's even more like, you know, kind of like, Terminator armor is really cool.
Okay.
They teleported into the ship.
Yeah.
And they teleported into the ship and blew up the things holding the ship in place from inside.
Yeah.
Basically, doing that triggered a chain of explosions that ripped through the entire area and destroyed like 10, 12 spires of Dark Eldar spires.
I feel like Vex didn't really think this through.
Freeing the ship, which then joined the fight.
Great.
The Space Marines who like drop podded in got surrounded and essentially were starting to get overrun. But of course, they just like teleported out and back onto the ships, and then the ships were like, "Okay, bye."
They retreated?
Well, so they weren't there to destroy Comorar.
Yeah, they just wanted their...
They were like, "Yo, do you really think you can fuck with us and get away with it? Nah."
We have to show them who's not boss.
so some of the Space Marines got, obviously cut off as they were being overrun, and just stayed there to basically hold out until they died, and they did. They did hold out and they did die, but it gave the Space Marines enough time to basically like fight off the Dark Eldar ships who were still trying to stop them from leaving. And they essentially just kind of went back through the portal they came into and headed back into real space.
Yeah.
Now,
tactical retreat.
There were a lot of Dark Eldar Drukhari in that fight, because obviously it's Comorar, it's where they all live basically.
Yeah.
So, all the nobility, all of the leaders, all of these like really important people are there in Comorar, and when the fighting starts, they're like, a lot of spires were destroyed, there was a lot of like destruction and death and all this kind of thing. There were massive losses. Even the Archons with Cabals and stuff that didn't get destroyed or killed still took significant losses. Except for one. Now, do you know who might have been absent while all this was happening? Him and his Cabal just happened to not be there.
Maybe it was Vex.
It was Vex.
Oh, wow. I feel like I'm learning so much about Warhammer.
So this is a story about the Space Marines basically invading Comorar and fucking it up a bit. The story is really about Vex, because Vex is a giant asshole, and he was like, I want power, but I don't want to like fight everyone for it. I'm basically gonna bait all of the powerful lords into destroying themselves via Space Marine. So,
I mean, it is one way to do it. Get stuff done.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to get his hands dirty and risk his own Cabal.
I mean, it's a fucking boss move. But I do have Vect on the discussion list.
Okay.
You should say. So if you like,
we can... the bin. That's my discussion.
If you like, we could go into Vect. I do also have how are we doing on so what's a really short one which we could touch on quickly before we take our next break?
Yeah.
Is the Sslyth.
The Sslyth.
The Sslyth is the snake people.
Snake boy.
You're painting right now. And I can get into explaining why you're painting them when they're not Dark Eldar technically.
That would probably be for the best, because people would be like, it's not Dark Eldar.
The Sslyth are mercenaries, essentially. The ones we see. The Sslyth are much more trusted as bodyguards because they're mercenaries. All Drukhari are kind of treacherous and unreliable because that's their nature. So it makes a lot of sense for the Drukhari, powerful Drukhari, who can afford it and who are worried about treachery and being betrayed and, you know, that type of thing, for them to be like, I don't trust myself, so I'm not going to trust my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And the Sslyth are really tough and very especially kind of like dangerous and strong and survivable, essentially. As you can see, they have 4 arms. They actually come from a planet or from a world which was destroyed to via Slaanesh.
Oh.
And the good thing about the Sslyth is they're kind of super, I wouldn't say greedy exactly, but they don't, you know, the Sslyth are the type of people who they wouldn't invest their money. They'd like spend it all on a night out, you know?
Yeah.
Like they're very much live in the moment beings who are just like, I'm rich, and then the next day they're like, I'm poor. Hire me again. So it's really easy for the Dark Eldar to exploit them. They don't really, they're not super intelligent. They're a lot more fighty. Like, I'd compare them a little bit to the orcs, not in general, but just in that kind of like, they enjoy fighting. They don't really feel pain the same way.
Yeah.
So
they're very effective at what they do.
Yeah, they're still sentient, so they're intelligent. As far as I know, they can talk. They can like speak different languages, like a lot of the other races can. But you know, it's kind of like, I don't think the Imperium makes a habit of trying to talk to snakes. So
yeah, they don't. They're not allowed to talk to Xenos.
Yeah, well, the majority they're not allowed to, and the Sslyth are a lot more alien looking than a lot of the other speaky, like even the orcs. They're green, but they look a lot more human than the Sslyth.
Yeah.
So the Eldar, the Dark Eldar and the Eldar don't really talk about, like when they're captured or whatever and they're asked about the Sslyth, they don't really talk about them. Some rogue traders have tried to hire Sslyth as mercenaries on their ships and stuff, but there's no actual reports of any being successful.
Oh.
So it's very possible, especially with the, and this is just my own thought and theory, basically, with the Sslyth homeworld being destroyed by Slaanesh and the whole Exodite thing, I do wonder whether they're connected to the Eldar.
Like psychically?
Well, if you think about it, like the Exodites have their dinosaurs and they have a kind of bond with their dinosaurs. The Sslyth homeworld was destroyed by Slaanesh, which is kind of an interesting coincidence. And they are obviously reptilians, and reptilians are descended from dinosaurs. So there's like a maybe thing in there where, you know, you give it 10,000 plus years, there might be like an evolution, or you know, maybe Exodites rose up some reptiles and
trained them to hold swords and have arms. And
the fact that they are mercenaries, kind of, but they only ever appear to work for the Dark Eldar and the Eldar and stuff.
Yeah.
It just has that feel to me where I'm like, that's interesting. That could be, you know, that could be some groundwork being laid for, you know, the fact that they have a connection to the Dark Eldar or to the Eldar or just the Eldar in general. The other possibility, of course, is just that rogue traders have hired them as mercenaries and just not told anyone, because that's kind of heresy.
It's not very loud, is it?
One of the interesting things about 40k is the lore has a tendency to be told from the Imperial perspective.
Yeah, I think I have noticed that. That's why I said earlier about the like, whose perspective is this on the Tyranids?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is we don't know the Tyranid lore from a Tyranid perspective. We know it from the Imperial perspective. So the things the Imperium have managed to find out tends to be what we know in the lore. You know, if we knew, like, that adds a little bit of mystery to all of the other Xenos races, because, you know, like the Sslyth thing, if we knew all of the lore from the Dark Eldar perspective, we'd know the deal about the Sslyth and like why they are like that. So, but yeah, they're really good fighters. They can kind of shrug off attacks decently, and they're like effective in combat. So.
And they're actually quite nice to paint.
Yeah, it's looking really cool.
I'm not too mad at him. There's the focus. There it is. I would say I probably should have painted him not built, but that scares me. So
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet. But yeah, looking pretty happy with them so far.
The just a little bit more on the Sslyth. The way the Sslyth acts often has been described as like drug addicts who no longer notice what's going on around them.
I mean, I bet the Drukhari would sort of set something like that up, though, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and also the other interesting thing is they've never been seen with their own technology.
Oh, they have to be provided with it all?
Or anything. So there's a theory that possibly the Drukhari or the Eldar, or maybe even the old ones, raised up a race who just never got technological with it. And and they're now kind of exploited. Like, it's very possible that the Dark Eldar kind of, you know, basically offer them battle and drugs and slaves and all that type of thing in return for service, and then kind of keep them hooked via that type of thing.
Yeah, I could see that happening. That's what I think.
Yeah,
from that perspective.
They're, you know, they might breed them. The Drukhari are kind of weird like that. There's a few connections to some of there's quite a few like minor alien races which are always really weird and messed up. The rat gull are an interesting one, and the Uvath as well, but we won't talk about either of those right now. They're often not really seen in bigger numbers than like an odd 5 to 10. That's like, you know, if they're by themselves, there'll be like a few of them, usually not more than 10.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, it would be really cool to know all of the lore on them and everything, but it's kind of interesting just to have it as like this weird little anomaly in Imperial lore, therefore we don't know it either. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to know, but that's because I'm a nosy person.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm also used to it because I've, you know, since like the early 90s or late 80s, I've been into 40k, like in and out, not often going that deep, but you kind of get used to the fact that some things you're just not gonna know. The Tyranids have been around since I started playing, I think, and they've kind of developed as they go, but we've never found out what they are or why the fuck they are, you know.
And I'm like, but why? But why? I need to know.
Yeah.
Let's go through the entryways into the galaxy and find out what's on the other side. Has no one tried that?
I mean, Steve did, but aside from him, we're not really
Well,
sure.
Steve is a power unto himself.
Yes. Oh god, they can't see it, can they? Because it's part of the. If anyone joins the Patreon as a patron, you'll get to see Tash's artistic rendition of Steve coming back from getting pizza and coffee.
And coffee. I
Um,
had a nice time painting that.
yeah,
Well, drawing that on my tablet.
it's just a little drawing, but
It was just
it's
it's
fun.
not good. I thought it was pretty funny though,
Yeah, I laughed.
but I think I'm funny all the time. So
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the Slith. Like, there's not a super load about them.
okay.
I'm sure if you wanted me to, I could dig down a little bit and find out about you know, like individual instances and a bit more details on them. But just talking about the Slith in general, I was like, we can cover that quickly before the next break because
Yeah.
you know they're one of the minor race like alien Xenos races, so there's not a shit ton on them.
No, and that's fair. I knew that it wasn't a major race when I picked him to paint, but
And they're commonly known as Drukhari foot soldiers, so it's acceptable.
yeah.
Yeah.